There are moments that split your life into before and after. Moments that arrive so quietly you don't realize they're seismic until the ground has already shifted beneath your feet. For Nadia, that moment came on a Thursday morning in the village square, delivered by her 6-year-old daughter's voice carrying across the crowd like a stone through glass. But we should start 4 months earlier, when Nadia was still just the orc woman who fixed broken things and tried very hard not to let anything else break. Nadia had lived in Riverside for 7 years. 7 years of keeping her head down, her forge hot, and her daughter safe. The town wasn't hostile exactly, not anymore. The war had ended 14 years ago, and the treaty meant orcs could settle in human communities if they followed the rules. And Nadia followed every single rule with the precision of someone who knew one mistake could cost her everything. She was the only metalworker in the Southern District, which meant humans needed her, even if they didn't particularly want to need her. They brought their broken plows, their cracked horseshoes, their dented pots. They paid fair prices. They didn't throw things. That was about as good as it got. Her forge sat at the edge of town where the cobblestone gave way to dirt paths, the kind of location that wasn't quite banishment, but wasn't quite belonging either. The building had been empty for 9 years before Nadia claimed it. Nobody wanted it because the previous owner had hanged himself in the rafters, and humans had complicated feelings about such things. Orcs didn't. Death was just death. The forge had good bones, solid walls, and a chimney that drew properly. That was what mattered. Elara had been born here, in the room above the workshop, in the middle of autumn, with only old Beatrice reluctantly helping because she was the closest thing the town had to a midwife, and even she couldn't ignore a woman in labor, orc or not. Beatrice never let Nadia forget it either. "Still think you owe me for that night," the old woman would grumble whenever Nadia passed her vegetable stall in the market. "Coldest autumn in 30 years, and I left my warm fire for you." "I paid you," Nadia would reply. The same exchange every time. "Coin doesn't make up for lost comfort." "Then maybe you shouldn't have come." And have a dead orc child on my conscience? You think I want that weight?" It was the closest thing to friendship Nadia had in Riverside. Elara, for her part, had inherited exactly none of her mother's caution. At 6 years old, she had the kind of fearlessness that came from not yet understanding why anyone would want to hurt her. She smiled at everyone. She asked questions of humans and orcs alike with the same boundless curiosity. She had opinions about everything from how apples should be sliced to which stars looked most like animals. "Mama, why don't humans have tusks?" she asked one morning while Nadia braided her thick black hair. "Because they're built different." "But why?" "Same reason fish don't have legs. Different doesn't need a why, it just is." "But if they don't have tusks, how do they open hard nuts?" "They use tools." Elara considered this with the gravity of a philosopher contemplating mortality. "That seems inefficient." "Probably why they invented hammers." "We invented hammers too." "We invented hammers to forge. They invented hammers to build. Different purposes." "Oh." Elara nodded like this explained every cosmic mystery. This was their rhythm. Nadia would work the forge from sunrise to sunset, and Elara would play in the yard, building elaborate structures from scrap metal and talking to herself in voices that represented entire civilizations. On market days, Elara would come along, holding tight to Nadia's hand, her green eyes wide as she absorbed every sight and sound. It was on one of these market days that Daniel appeared. Nadia noticed him the way you notice furniture that's been rearranged. You can't quite say what's different, but something is. He'd set up a stall near the well, which was prime location and meant he had either paid well or knew someone important. His cart was painted forest green with silver lettering that read, "Daniel's Wares, Textiles, Spices, and Tales from Farlands." The tales part was unusual. Most merchants didn't advertise that. He was tall for a human, though still shorter than Nadia. Dark hair that fell to his collar, the kind that looked like it had given up trying to be tidy. A beard kept neat, which marked him as someone who cared about appearance but wasn't precious about it. He wore a gray vest over a white shirt, both well-made but worn, the clothes of someone who had means but didn't need you to know about it. What struck Nadia most was how he looked at people. Not past them, not through them, but at them. Direct eye contact, genuine interest. The kind of attention that made you feel like you were the only person in the market even though there were dozens of others waiting. She watched him for 4 Thursdays before he noticed her watching. On the fifth Thursday, Alara noticed him first. "Mama, that man has red fabric," Alara announced, tugging Nadia's hand. "I've never seen red fabric that bright before." "That's because bright red costs more than our forge." "Can we look?" "We're here for iron stock and vegetables, not red fabric. But looking is free." This was a trap. Nadia knew it was a trap, but Alara had a way of making traps seem perfectly reasonable. And before Nadia could construct a proper argument, they were standing in front of Daniel's stall. Up close, the fabrics were even more impressive. Silks that seemed to shimmer with movement. Spices in glass jars that smelled like places Nadia had never been and probably never would be. Carved wooden boxes with tiny mechanisms that click shut with satisfying precision. "Good morning," Daniel said, and his voice matched his eyes. Warm, genuine, the kind of tone that didn't perform friendliness, but simply was friendly. Then he looked down. "And who's this?" "I'm Alara," Alara announced before Nadia could stop her. "I'm 6 and I live in the forge and I like red." "Alara," Nadia said quietly. "We should—" "6 is an excellent age," Daniel interrupted, still smiling at Alara. "Old enough to have opinions, young enough to be honest about them. And red is a sophisticated choice." He pulled out a small square of red silk barely bigger than his palm. "This one's from the western provinces. They use a special beetle to make the dye. Takes about 5,000 beetles to make enough for one scarf." Ilara's eyes went enormous. 5,000? Give or take? That's so many beetles. "It really is. Makes you appreciate red more, doesn't it? Knowing how many beetles contributed." "Did they volunteer?" "I don't think beetles have strong feelings about volunteering, but they definitely participated." Alara giggled, the kind of delighted giggle that meant she'd just decided this human was interesting. Nadia's stomach tightened. "We should go," Nadia said, firmer this time. Daniel looked up then, really looked, met her eyes with that same direct attention he gave everyone else, and Nadia braced herself for the moment when his expression would change, when he'd notice the green skin, the tusks, the pointed ears, when friendliness would freeze into politeness, or worse, thinly veiled discomfort. The moment never came. "I'm Daniel," he said, extending a hand. "Just opened shop last month, still learning who's who around here." Nadia stared at the hand. Humans didn't usually offer to shake hands with orcs. Physical contact was complicated, politically acceptable, but socially suspicious. She took it. His grip was warm, firm, and lasted exactly the socially appropriate 2 seconds before releasing. "Nadia," she said, "I run the forge in the South District." "The metal worker. I've heard about you. Thomas, my apprentice, says you're the only one in town who can properly temper a blade." "Thomas is the boy with the collection?" "Feathers, stones, interesting pieces of glass he finds significant. Yes, that's Thomas. He brought me a bent knife 2 weeks ago, asked if I could fix it, and also if I thought metal had memories." Daniel laughed, a genuine belly laugh that made Alara laugh too. "What did you tell him?" "That I could fix the knife. The metal would have to remember for itself." "Diplomatic. I appreciate that in a metalworker." There was a pause. Not an awkward one, just a pause. The kind where both people are deciding if this conversation ends here or continues. Alara decided for them. "Can I touch the red?" she asked. "Alara," Nadia started. "Of course," Daniel said, holding out the silk square. "Careful, though. It's delicate." Alara touched it with the reverence usually reserved for baby animals and sleeping flowers. Her small green fingers traced the edge of the fabric, and her face split into the widest smile Nadia had seen in weeks. "It's soft like water," Alara whispered. "I've never touched water that could be held," Daniel said seriously. "But I'll trust your expertise." "Mama, feel it." "Alara, we need to—" "Please," Nadia sighed, picked up the silk. It was soft, impossibly soft, like touching air if air could be tangible. "Beautiful craftsmanship," she said, because it was, and lying wouldn't change that. "Thank you, though I can't take credit. I just transport it. The real artists are the weavers." Daniel paused, then added, "You know, I've been meaning to visit the forge. I need some custom hooks made for the cart. Would you have time this week?" This was the other moment where things could have gone differently. Where Nadia could have said she was busy, or that she didn't take custom orders, or any of a dozen polite deflections that would have kept the boundary exactly where it was. Instead, she said Saturday afternoon, after the heat breaks. Perfect. I'll see you then. They left. Alara hummed the whole way home, a song about red beetles. Nadia said nothing, but something in her chest felt different. Not quite hope. Hope was dangerous, but maybe possibility. The faintest whisper of it. Saturday came. Daniel arrived exactly when he said he would, which was notable because humans in Nadia's experience operated on flexible definitions of punctuality. He brought Thomas with him, a lanky boy with straw-colored hair and nervous hands that went to his pocket every few minutes to touch whatever lucky stone he'd chosen that day. 8 hooks, Daniel explained, showing Nadia a rough sketch. Need them to hold about 30 pounds each. The cart's heavier than it looks. Iron or steel? Which is stronger? Steel, but costs more. Steel, then. This cart's my living? Worth doing right. Nadia nodded, quoted him a price that was fair, but not discounted. He agreed without haggling. They shook on it, and that was that. Except it wasn't, because Daniel didn't leave. Instead, he stood in the doorway of the forge, watching Nadia work with the kind of fascination usually reserved for street performers or exotic animals. You can sit, Nadia said after 15 minutes of feeling his eyes on her. There's a bench. I don't want to intrude. You're already intruding. Sitting won't make it worse. He sat. Thomas sat next to him, pulling out a stone to examine while casting curious glances at Alara, who was building something elaborate in the corner with scrap metal and twine. What are you making? Thomas asked her eventually. A castle, Alara said, as if this were obvious. But the towers are hard. Towers need to be balanced or they fall. Castles aren't real, though. So, boats aren't real until someone builds them. Same with castles. Thomas had no argument for this logic. He offered her one of his stones. For good luck. Do I give it back after? No, it's a gift. Then thank you. Alara tucked the stone into her pocket with the solemnity of someone accepting a great treasure. Daniel watched this exchange with the faintest smile. You're raising a negotiator. I'm raising someone who asked too many questions, Nadia corrected, hammering a piece of steel that would become the first hook. Best kind of person to raise. Says the man who doesn't have to answer them. Fair point. They lapsed into comfortable silence. The kind of silence that doesn't need filling. Nadia worked. Daniel watched. Thomas and Alara negotiated the terms of castle construction in the corner. Can I ask you something? Daniel said eventually. Nadia's hand stilled. Here it came. The question. The real reason he'd stayed. The curiosity that everyone had but most people were too polite or too afraid to voice. You can ask, she said carefully. Can't promise I'll answer. Why metalworking? That wasn't the question she'd expected. Why does anyone do anything? I'm good at it. It pays. But how'd you learn? Metalworking isn't exactly something you pick up casually. Nadia considered not answering. But something about Daniel's tone, genuine interest without the weight of judgment, made her relent. My father was an armorer. Learned from him before. She paused. Before the war. Does he teach Alara too? He's dead. I'm sorry. You didn't kill him. Doesn't mean I can't be sorry. Nadia looked at him then, really looked, searching for the catch, the angle, the hidden contempt. She found none of it, just a man who seemed to actually mean what he said. Your turn, she said. Why traveling merchant? Because staying in one place makes me restless. Because I like seeing places most people only hear about. Because my wife always wanted to travel, and when she died, I figured I'd travel enough for both of us. That's 3 reasons. I contain multitudes. How long ago? 4 years. Sickness took her in spring. Fast. 1 week she was fine. Next week she was gone. He said it matter-of-factly, the way people talk about old pain they've made peace with. No children. Just me and Thomas now. He's not yours? Not by blood. Found him about 18 months ago, living rough in the market at Milford. Parents died in a barn fire. No family willing to take him. So I did. That was kind. That was practical. I needed help with the cart. He needed food and shelter. Trade worked for both of us. But the way he watched Thomas, with the protective attention of someone who'd carved out space in their life that had previously been empty, said it was more than a trade. The hooks took 3 weeks to complete. Daniel visited 6 times during those 3 weeks, always finding some reason to check on progress, always staying longer than necessary. They talked about metalwork and trade routes, about the war neither of them wanted to fight, about the careful dance of living in a world that was technically at peace but practically still divided. On the 6th visit, Daniel brought pastries from Beatrice's stall. "For you and Alara," he said. "Figured you probably skip lunch when you were working." He was right. She did. They ate together in the yard. Alara chattering about castle architecture, Thomas listening with the intensity of someone taking mental notes. Daniel and Nadia sitting on opposite ends of the bench, eating in that easy silence that had somehow become their default. "Your daughter's remarkable," Daniel said quietly, watching Alara demonstrate tower angles with her hands. "She doesn't know enough to be afraid yet," Nadia replied. "Thinks everyone's a potential friend." "Is that such a bad thing? In this world? Yes. Maybe she'll make a better world then." Nadia wanted to say that was naive, that the world didn't change because children wished it did. That hope was a luxury people like her couldn't afford. Instead, she said nothing, because maybe, just maybe, there was a sliver of truth in what he said. When the hooks were finished, Daniel paid in full and added extra. "What's this for?" Nadia asked, looking at the extra coins. "Quality work deserves quality pay. I quoted you fair, and I'm paying you better than fair. Take it, or I'll leave it on the bench and you'll have to track me down to give it back." Nadia took it. "You're a strange man, Daniel." "I get that a lot." He loaded the hooks into his cart, testing each one with weight. "These are perfect. Exactly what I needed. They're hooks, not complicated. Maybe, but they're hooks that won't break. That's worth something." He paused, hand on the cart rail. "I'll be in town for another 4 months. If you ever need anything, supplies, materials, just someone to talk to, you know where to find me." It was an offer, not a demand, not an expectation, just an offer. "I'll keep that in mind," Nadia said. And she did. Over the next 2 months, she found reasons to walk past Daniel's stall, checking prices on this or that, asking about materials she might need in the future, bringing Alara to look at fabrics she couldn't afford but could appreciate. Daniel never made it weird, never pushed, just greeted them with that same genuine warmth and treated conversations like they were the most natural thing in the world. Alara naturally noticed. "Mama, you smile different when we see Daniel," she announced one evening while Nadia tucked her into bed. "I do not." "You do. Your mouth does the thing." "What thing?" "The happy thing. The same thing you do when you finish a really hard piece." "That's just my face." "Nuh-uh. That's your I like something face. I know all your faces." "You're 6. You don't know all my faces." "I know the important ones." Nadia should have changed the subject, should have redirected, should have done anything except what she did, which was absolutely nothing while her daughter studied her with those 2 knowing eyes. "Do you like Daniel?" Alara asked. "He's a customer." "That's not what I asked." "Alara, it's okay if you like him, Mama. He's nice. He brings us pastries. And he lets me ask questions without getting annoyed. And he has good stories. And—" "Sleep," Nadia interrupted. "You can list his qualities tomorrow." "So you do like him?" "I like sleep. Go to sleep." Alara giggled, burrowing into her blanket. "Okay, but I'm right." She was. That was the problem. Because somewhere between the hooks and the pastries and the quiet conversations, Nadia had stopped thinking of Daniel as just the merchant in the market. He'd become Daniel. The man who made Alara laugh. The man who asked questions because he actually wanted to know the answers. The man who looked at her like she was a person first and an orc second. It was dangerous. It was foolish. It was exactly the kind of thing that got people hurt. But it was also true. The thing about truth is it doesn't care about your plans. It doesn't wait for convenient timing or safe spaces. It just exists, getting heavier every day you try to carry it alone. For Nadia, that weight became unbearable on a Thursday morning in the village square. They'd gone for supplies, flour, salt, nails, the boring necessities that couldn't wait. Alara was in high spirits because Beatrice had given her a slightly burned biscuit, before it went to waste. And even slightly burned biscuits were exciting when you were 6. Daniel's stall was crowded, 4 customers examining fabrics, 2 more asking about spices. Thomas was handling the chaos with the frazzled competence of someone who'd learned to manage overwhelm by necessity. "We should come back later," Nadia said, steering Alara away. But Alara had spotted Daniel, and more importantly, Daniel had spotted them. He smiled, that easy, genuine smile that reached his eyes, raised a hand in greeting, and Alara, with the complete and total lack of social awareness possessed only by children and very drunk people, waved back enthusiastically. Then she shouted, loud enough for half the market to hear, "My mama likes you!" Time didn't stop. Time never actually stops. But it felt like it did. Felt like every person in the market turned simultaneously. Felt like the air itself held its breath. Nadia's mind went blank. Completely, utterly blank. The kind of blank where thoughts should be, but there's only static in the distant sound of your life imploding. Daniel's smile froze. Not in disgust, not in horror, just froze. Like he'd been turned to stone mid-expression. The customers at his stall stopped examining fabrics. Beatrice stopped muttering to herself. Roland, who'd been loading supplies into a wagon near the well, went very still. Alara, oblivious to the crater she'd just created in her mother's life, kept waving. "She does. She smiles at you all funny, and she asks me about you, and she—" "Alara," Nadia managed to choke out. "Stop talking." "But now," something in Nadia's voice penetrated. Alara's mouth clicked shut. Her smile faltered. "Did I say something wrong?" she asked in a smaller voice. Nadia couldn't answer. Because yes, Alara had said something catastrophically wrong. But also no, because it was true, and you couldn't punish a child for telling the truth. "We're leaving," Nadia said. She took Alara's hand and walked. Fast. Faster than was probably wise, but stopping would mean facing the stairs, and she couldn't do that. Not now, not yet. "Nadia, wait!" That was Daniel's voice. Behind her. She didn't turn around. "Nadia, please." She walked faster. Alara stumbled, trying to keep up. They made it to the forge in record time, Nadia's heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Inside, door closed, breath coming in sharp gasps that had nothing to do with the pace of walking and everything to do with the fact that her carefully constructed life had just detonated in the middle of the village square. Alara started crying. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet tears, the kind that hurt more because they came from real distress instead of performative upset. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to make you upset." Nadia knelt down, pulled Alara into a hug that was probably too tight, but she couldn't loosen it. "I know. You didn't do anything wrong. But you're crying." She was, apparently. Hadn't even noticed the tears until Alara mentioned them. "Sometimes adults cry when things are complicated," Nadia said. "It's not your fault." "Do you really like Daniel?" "Yes." "Then why is that bad?" How do you explain to a 6-year-old that the world has rules written and unwritten? That people can be polite on the surface while harboring sharp edges underneath? That humans and orcs could live in the same town but not in the same lives? That loving someone from the other side was technically legal but practically dangerous? You don't, because they're 6, and they shouldn't have to know that yet. "It's not bad," Nadia said carefully. "It's just complicated." "Complicated how?" "Complicated like trying to mix oil and water. They don't naturally go together. But you can mix them if you stir hard enough. I've seen Beatrice do it when she makes dough. That's different." "Wait a minute, because dough doesn't have feelings about being mixed." Alara thought about this. "Do you want to be mixed with Daniel?" Nadia laughed. It came out half sob. "It doesn't matter what I want." "Why not?" "Because wanting isn't enough." But oh, she did want. That was the knife twisting in her chest. She wanted it so much it hurt. Wanted those easy conversations and shared silences. Wanted someone to eat pastries with. Wanted Alara to have someone who made her laugh. Wanted to not be so desperately, achingly alone in a world that insisted she had to be. She wanted, and wanting was dangerous. There was a knock at the door. Nadia's stomach dropped. "Don't answer it," she whispered to Alara. Another knock, more insistent. "Nadia, I know you're in there." Daniel's voice, of course it was, Go upstairs, Nadia told Ilara. But now, please. Ilara fled. Her footsteps echoed on the wooden stairs, then vanished into her room. Nadia opened the door. Daniel stood there, breathing hard, hair messed from running. His cart was nowhere in sight. He'd left it in the market to chase after her. Left his livelihood unattended. For this. For her. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I know that probably made things difficult and You should go. Nadia, please, just go. This was a mistake. What was a mistake? Her telling the truth? Yes, no, this whole thing, all of it, we can't. She gestured helplessly between them. This doesn't work. Why not? You know why not. Spell it out for me. Because I'm orc and you're human, and this town is barely held together by polite tolerance. And if people think She couldn't even finish the sentence. It won't end well for either of us. Daniel took a step closer, not threatening, just closer. Is it true? Is what true? What Ilara said, do you like me? Every instinct screamed to lie, to deflect, to protect herself the way she'd been protecting herself for 7 years in this town. Yes, she said instead, because apparently her mouth had disconnected from her brain's survival instincts. Daniel's expression shifted. Not horror, not disgust, just something soft, something warm. Good, he said, because I like you too. The world tilted, actually tilted. Nadia gripped the doorframe to keep from swaying. You can't. Little late for that. Daniel, I like how you work. I like how you talk to Ilara. I like how you don't sugarcoat things, but you're never cruel about it. I like that you eat too fast because you forget to chew when you're thinking. I like that you smell like forge smoke and iron and something else I can't quite place but makes me want to keep noticing it. He paused. I like you as a person who happens to be an orc, in that order. Nadia's chest felt like it was cracking open. The town can deal with it. They won't. Then they won't, but that's their problem, not ours. You don't understand what you're saying. I understand perfectly. I'm saying I like you. I'm saying I want to see where this goes. I'm saying I don't care what color you are or what people think, because I've spent 4 years being lonely and careful, and now I've met someone who makes me want to stop being either of those things. It's more than inconvenient. Okay, it's dangerous. It's difficult. It's probably going to make both our lives harder. But Nadia, he looked at her with those eyes that saw through walls. I've been alone for 4 years, and I've been fine with it until I met you, and now I'm not fine with it anymore. And I don't think you're fine with it either. He was right. That was the problem. He was absolutely right, and she hated it. What if we try and it falls apart? She asked quietly. Then it falls apart, but at least we tried. What if it gets Ilara hurt? What if it gives Ilara a chance to see love that crosses boundaries? What if we show her the world can be bigger than the boxes people try to stuff it into? Nadia wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons this was a terrible idea, wanted to protect herself and Ilara from the inevitable pain. But she was so tired, so desperately, bone-achingly tired of being alone. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Neither do I. But we can figure it out together. People are going to talk. Let them. They're going to stare. I'll stare back. Daniel, Nadia, I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm asking if I can come by for dinner sometime. Maybe bring Thomas, see what happens. That's all. It should have been a small thing, just dinner, but it felt enormous, like standing on the edge of a cliff, deciding whether to jump. Saturday, she said before she could stop herself, after the forge closes. Daniel smiled, that real, genuine smile that had started this whole mess. Saturday. Saturday arrived with the inevitability of storms and tax day. Nadia cleaned the forge 4 times, changed her tunic 3 times, braided her hair, unbraided it, braided it again differently. Ilara watched with barely contained glee. You're nervous. I'm not nervous. Your ears twitch when you're nervous. They do not. They do, and they're twitching right now. Nadia forced them to stay still. Ears were not supposed to be that expressive. Evolutionary flaw. Daniel arrived exactly on time. He brought bread, cheese, and a jar of honey that looked expensive. Thomas trailed behind him, carrying a basket that clinked promisingly. "What's in there?" Alara demanded immediately. "Patience," Thomas said wisely, with the air of someone who'd recently learned patience and wanted everyone to know. "Patience is boring." "Then prepare to be bored." Just for a minute, though. They ate at the table Nadia had built when she'd first moved in. Sturdy, practical, scarred from years of living. Daniel and Thomas sat on one side, Nadia and Alara on the other. Like negotiating teams at a treaty signing, except the treaty was dinner and the terms were whether anyone could remember how to make conversation that didn't revolve around the elephant in the room shaped like cross-species courtship. "This bread is really good," Daniel said eventually. "It's Beatrice's," Nadia replied. "She makes good bread." "She does." "Yes." Silence. Not comfortable. Just silence. Alara sighed dramatically. "You're both being weird. Just talk like normal." "We are talking normal," Nadia protested. "No, you're not. You're talking like when Roland tries to talk to the magistrate, all stiff and careful." She turned to Thomas. "Do you have any stones with you?" Thomas brightened immediately. "4, want to see?" Obviously, they retreated to the corner, blessed, nonsense-free zone of children who hadn't yet learned that dinner parties required social navigation. Daniel laughed quietly. "She's got a point. I'm being weird." "We're both being weird." "Should we stop?" "Probably. Don't know how, though." "Start with something easy. Tell me about the forge. When did you know you wanted to be a metalworker?" And just like that, the conversation found its footing. Nadia talked about learning from her father, about the satisfaction of taking broken things and making them whole, about how metal was honest. It bent or it broke, but it never lied about what it could handle. Daniel talked about traveling, about the year he spent in the Eastern Territories where it snowed 9 months a year and people ate fish for breakfast, about finding Thomas and realizing loneliness wasn't noble, it was just lonely. They talked until the candles burned low, until Alara and Thomas had built an elaborate maze for Thomas's stones to navigate, until the awkwardness dissolved into something that felt dangerously close to easy. When Daniel and Thomas left, he paused in the doorway. "Can we do this again?" he asked. "Yes," Nadia said. Not carefully, not cautiously, just yes. They did it again and again. Saturday dinners became routine. Daniel would bring food, Nadia would cook it into something resembling an actual meal. Thomas and Alara would build increasingly complex games in the corner. The town noticed. Of course the town noticed. Riverside was too small for secrets and too bored for discretion. Beatrice cornered Nadia in the market. "You know what you're doing?" "Making business arrangements," Nadia said flatly. "That's not business. That's something else." "Oh, I should say it." "Then it's something else, still not your concern." Just saying, people talk." "Let them." Beatrice studied her with those sharp old eyes that had seen too much to be shocked anymore. "You really like him?" "Is that a question?" "Statement. You get this look, like you're surprised the sky didn't fall." She paused. "He looks at you the same way." "And you're saying this because I'm old and bitter, and I've watched too many people waste chances they'll never get back. War took my husband. Sickness took my son. You think I don't know about losing things?" She shook her head. "If you found something good in this mess of a world, hold on to it. Everyone else's opinions can rot." It was the closest thing to a blessing Nadia had ever received from a human in Riverside. Roland was less supportive. "You're making a mistake," he said bluntly when he cornered her at the forge. "Humans don't mix with orcs. They tolerate us. That's different from accepting us." "Maybe." "Not maybe. Definitely." "You think he'll stick around when things get hard? When his human friends start asking questions? When your daughter gets called names in the street because her mother chose a human?" "Alara already gets called names. This will make it worse, or it'll make it better. Give her a different future to believe in." "You're being naive." "I'm being hopeful. That's different." Roland grunted. "Hope's a luxury. We can't afford luxuries." "Then maybe we've been poor too long." He left without another word, but the weight of his concern stayed. The weight of everyone's concern stayed. Comments in the market, stares that lasted too long, conversations that stopped when Nadia walked past. the polite tolerance fraying at the edges. Nadia felt it all, carried it like stones in her pockets, getting heavier each week. But then Daniel would show up on Saturday, and Thomas would show Alara his newest stone, and they'd eat together at the scarred table. And for a few hours, the weight lifted. 3 months in, Daniel brought something different. Not food, a small wrapped bundle tied with twine. "What's this?" Nadia asked. "Open it." She did. Inside was fabric. Blue fabric. Not just any blue. The exact shade of clear sky at noon. Silk, soft as water. Or so Alara had said the first time she touched it. "Daniel, I remembered. You said you liked it, but it cost too much. So I saved some from my next shipment." "I can't accept this." "Well, why not?" "It's too much. It's fabric. That I paid for with money I earned, which I'm now giving to you, because I want to." "Daniel, there's more." He pulled out something else. Small. Metal. Nadia's breath caught. It was a brooch. Tiny, delicate, shaped like two hands clasped together. One larger, one smaller. "You made this," Daniel said. "About 6 weeks ago, I saw it on your work table and asked if I could buy it. You said it wasn't for sale, so I waited until you weren't looking and borrowed it. Had the jeweler in the next town add a catch to the back so it could hold fabric." He demonstrated, pinning the blue silk to the brooch. The effect was stunning. Rough metal and delicate fabric, joined together in something that was more beautiful than either part alone. "I wanted to give you something that showed," he paused, "that showed what this could be. Different things working together, making something new." Nadia couldn't speak. Her throat had closed completely. "Mama?" Alara's voice, uncertain. "Are you okay?" Nadia tried. Couldn't. Just held the brooch and the fabric and tried not to fall apart. Daniel looked worried. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset." "I'm not upset. You're crying. That's different." "How is crying not?" "I'm crying because this is the kindest thing anyone's ever given me, and I don't know what to do with kindness." The words came out in a rush. "I've spent 7 years here being tolerated, being the orc who fixes things, being good enough to take coin from but not good enough to eat with. And you show up and you act like I'm just a person. Like being orc is just one thing about me instead of the only thing. And I don't know how to—" She stopped, breathed. "I don't know how to accept that someone could actually see me and not just what I am." Daniel reached across the table, took her hand, the rough, calloused hand that smelled of forged smoke and iron, held it like it was something precious. "I see you," he said quietly. "Nadia, metalworker, mother, person who eats too fast and works too hard and laughs like she's surprised the sound came out. I see you, all of you, and what I see is someone I want to keep seeing." "The town, to hell with the town," Alara gasped. "That's a bad word." "Sorry, Alara, but sometimes bad words are the only ones that fit." He looked back at Nadia. "I don't care what they think. I care what you think. Do you want this? Whatever this is? Do you want to find out what it could be?" Did she want it? She wanted it so badly it terrified her, wanted those Saturday dinners forever, wanted someone to share the weight with, wanted Alara to see that the world could be bigger than walls and prejudice, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, hope wasn't a luxury they couldn't afford, but a necessity they'd been denying themselves. "Yes," she said, "I want this." Daniel smiled, that real, genuine smile that had started everything. "Then let's figure it out together." They did, not easily, not smoothly, but together. The town's reaction escalated from whispers to confrontation. Someone threw a rock through the forge window with a note tied around it. "Orc lover," scrawled in uneven letters. Beatrice found out who'd done it and banned them from buying vegetables for 6 weeks. "Act like children. Get treated like children," she'd muttered. Thomas punched a boy who called Alara a mistake waiting to happen. Came home with a split lip and absolutely no regret. Daniel scolded him for fighting but also bought him a new stone for standing up for family. Roland stopped speaking to Nadia entirely for 4 weeks. Then showed up at this forge with a carefully carved wooden toy for Alara and muttered, "Fine, if you're going to be foolish properly. Teach the girl to defend herself." The world didn't change overnight. People still stared, still whispered, still made Nadia and Daniel's existence together a spectacle and a scandal. But slowly, so slowly, it was barely noticeable. Things shifted. Daniel proposed 8 months after that first Saturday dinner, not with fanfare, not with a public declaration, just a quiet moment in the forge, watching Alara and Thomas argue about the physics of castle towers. "Marry me," he said. Nadia looked at him. "You're insane." "Probably, is that a no?" "It's a you understand what you're asking. I'm asking you to be my wife, to let me be Alara's father, to build a life that's probably going to be harder than if we'd chosen safer options. But I don't want safe. I want you. The town will deal with it, or won't. Either way, I'm still asking." "Yes," Nadia said. "Yes, let's be foolish properly." They married in the spring, small ceremony. Beatrice attended, grumbling about wasting a perfectly good afternoon. Roland came, standing in the back with his arms crossed but his eyes suspiciously wet. Thomas stood as Daniel's witness. Alara wore red and held the rings. The town managed. Some people refused to acknowledge it. Some people came around. Most people just learned to live with the reality that Riverside now had its first mixed marriage, and the world hadn't ended. Alara gained a father who taught her about spices and distant kingdoms. Thomas gained a mother who taught him about metalwork and how to argue constructively. Nadia gained a partner who shared the weight instead of adding to it. Daniel gained a family he had stopped hoping was possible. 18 months later, Nadia gave birth to a son, half orc, half human. A little boy with green skin and Daniel's dark eyes. They named him Jonathan. 2 years after that, a daughter, human in appearance but with the strength of her orc bloodline running through her veins. They named her Lily. The family portrait was impossible by most people's standards. One orc, one human, two full orc children, one half orc child, one human child. A patchwork of bloodlines and choices in love that refused to stay in neat boxes. "We look absurd," Nadia said, studying the painted portrait the traveling artist had made. "We look perfect," Daniel corrected. "Same thing," Alara announced. She was 12 now, still asking too many questions, still building impossible things, still believing the world could be bigger than the boxes people tried to stuff it into. Jonathan toddled over, pointing at the painting. "Family." "That's right," Daniel said, scooping him up. "Family." "But we're all different," Lily observed. She was 4 and analytical, took after Nadia in the best ways. "Different isn't bad," Thomas said. He was 19 now, almost ready to strike out on his own, already planning to carry this lesson into whatever life he built. "Different is just different. And different made us," Alara added, grinning at her mother. "Right, Mama?" Nadia looked around the forge that had become a home, at the children playing in the yard where she'd once worked alone, at the man who'd somehow looked past green skin and seen her, at the impossible family they'd built from stubbornness and hope, and the willingness to try even when everyone said they'd fail. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Different made us." Daniel found her later that evening, standing in the doorway watching the children play in the twilight. "You okay?" he asked. "Just thinking about that first day in the market, when Alara announced to everyone that I liked you. She had no filter at 6, still doesn't at 12. No, but she was right. I did like you. I do like you." She leaned into him. "I love you. I love you too." "Still?" "Always." They stood there as the sun set over Riverside, a town that had learned to hold space for love that didn't fit into easy categories, a town that would never be perfect but had managed to be good enough. Inside the house, children argued about bedtime. Jonathan claimed he wasn't tired despite yawning every 30 seconds. Lily insisted she needed to hear one more story. Alara was trying to explain engineering principles to Thomas using kitchen utensils. Normal chaos, beautiful chaos, the chaos of a family that chose itself. "We did it," Nadia whispered. "Did what?" "Made something impossible." "Impossible's just another word for nobody tried hard enough yet." Nadia smiled, held the brooch pinned to her tunic, the one Daniel had given her years ago, 2 hands clasped together, different metals, different origins, joined into something stronger than either part alone. "In the end," Daniel said quietly, "the world didn't need perfect people. It needed broken people willing to mend each other." That's poetic. I have my moments. Rare moments. Accurate moments. They went inside, together. To the family they'd built from hope and stubbornness, and the revolutionary act of choosing love in a world that tried to say it was impossible. And if the town still whispered sometimes, let them. Whispers couldn't change what was true. Some families are born, some families are built, and some families are forged in fire, shaped by love, and tempered by the courage to believe that different doesn't mean impossible. This was one of those families, and they were perfect.